The glass ceiling is and you'll hear a lot of like white feminists chant this, like, oh, 77 cents to $1. But the backstory, and I'm going to be honest, as a white feminist before in college, I definitely chanted that shit too. Sorry for cussing.
Much as you want.
But
canceled.
Canceled.
What's up, everybody? How's it going? Another episode of the Cancelled Podcast. As always, it's your boy Jay, our other co-host Elliott, the philosopher scholar, and then today we have two lovely guests in front of us. We have Miss CeCe. Is it Kilgore or Kilgore? How do you pronounce it?
The second one.
So Kilgore.
Yes, sir.
All right, got you covered. And then Mrs. Ronnie McKinney.
Hello.
So on today's episode, we're going to be discussing feminism and womanism, and so we're going to get the conversation started. So let's see, where should we start off at? So I have some textbook definitions of what a feminist is, what a womanist is, and then I want to bounce those off you and see if y'all agree with them or not. So Ronnie, you said you identify as a feminist, and then CeCe, you identify as a womanist, correct?
Yes.
That's correct. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with feminism in terms of like the definition. So what I pulled up was feminism is a range of social and political ideologies that aim to define and establish the political, economic, personal, and social equality of the sexes, with the goal being to obtain opportunities and outcomes that are equal to those for men. Okay? And then for womanism, it is a form of feminism that emphasizes women's natural contribution to society, used by some in distinction in the terms of feminism and its association with white women, but then also broadening the spectrum to include Black women, women of color, immigrant women, and various other aspects that may not have been traditionally covered by feminism. So based on that, what would y'all say about those two definitions? Do you agree with them? Well, where do we go from here?
I 110% agree with both definitions. The way I see it, it's like womanism is the tree, and then like feminism is a branch of that tree. Just because womanism, it encompasses, like you just listed, so many other shades of women who are not just white, from Black women to Hispanic women to immigrant women. I mean, I think you did a really great job like highlighting all of the other women that fit within that broader spectrum. Of feminism.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely agree. I think womanism is a lot more broad in that situation. It has like all the intersectionals, like the intersectional. So I actually identify as an intersectional feminist, not so much with the white feminism where they only care about the glass ceiling kind of thing. Okay. But yeah, I think womanism has the ability and has the status of like actually taking into account like race, gender, sexuality, economic class, where you're from, just a lot more details that are a lot of times overlooked with the traditional feminism definition.
Okay. And then so with feminism and womanism both being pretty new to me, like in terms of like the textbook, what it actually represents, like I consider myself feminist, but it's like after researching, I'm just like, there's a lot for me to learn about where I could even label myself. And like, so we have Elliott, the genius scholar. We want to see how you identify, like if you consider yourself feminist or not, and any additional labels that you would like to contribute to it.
Like, to be totally honest, yeah, I would say that I'm an intersectional feminist as well. I've always felt like a feminist. I just, what's the word when you don't want anyone to be held back in their lives by gender?
I have a word that I think should be a thing, and I was talking to CeCe, maybe Elliott, someone about this. There should be a word called equitist instead of like an equalist, because you want an equity. So like equitist.
We talked about that at the Brio.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's a cool term. I think it definitely, let's stamp it. It's a real word. It's in the website.
I like it. You heard it coined here for the first time.
Yeah, no, and I so one thing is that when I was younger and I took women's studies, I read a little bit more and I said, oh, I'm an egalitarian. I think that the genders should be equal. And egalitarian though. And I was talking to a friend and she told me, she's like, well, that's actually feminism. that is what feminism fights for, the equality of the sexes.
See
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan. You're about to-
I agree. But like, so like the equality of the sexes, but at the same time, like, even if you have like an equal, like that whole meme of like equality versus equity versus like,
I was gonna say that. Yep.
Yeah.
is very different. So yeah.
Do you both feel that feminism and womanism fight for equity?
I think feminism fights for equality, like equal pay and, you know, all that jazz, equal access to politics. And I feel like womanism has more of a, I don't know, equity standpoint compared to feminism.
And to be honest, I do agree. Like traditional, like pussy hats, marching on Washington, definitely been there, went there with CeCe. Yes, but it's very mostly focused on equality of like that equal pay, the glass ceiling. It's like the traditional white feminism, the problems that happen to white people versus like if a Black woman who is in engineering is going to have a very different experience of a white woman in engineering. Both are like not as equal or equitable as like being a white male in engineering, but a Black woman is going to have a very different experience because she is Black. And I think feminism, traditional feminism, doesn't approach that and doesn't really care.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned like traditional feminism as well, because it does seem like, so even though the definition says that womanism is a branch of feminism, it's very interesting to see that womanism kind of took off its own separate branch. I think it was around the time of second wave, third wave feminism, but now you're starting to see it adapted more into the more mainstream culture. So like, for example, one word that comes from womanism that's very prevalent now is intersectionality. And so we're seeing it everywhere, and it's kind of based on that foundation of, you know, there's so many different spectrums, so many different forms of oppression that women and just various people like have to endure, but now they're bringing that to kind of like the spotlight. So I kind of like that aspect where it may have originated as a branch, but now it's kind of, you know, becoming more equitous as a whole. And now it seems like, and this depends on how you look at it, would you even say that by feminism and womanism both being heavily embraced, that now modern feminism is becoming more equitable as well, instead of based on just equality, that's becoming more equitous? Is that the right word? Equitous? I think so.
We're making that up too, equitous.
This is the thing now. I don't know if I agree, because I do believe like that the term white feminism is very strong, I would say.
And when you look at it too, from a traditional standpoint, like Veronica was saying, like feminism, it was created for middle and upper class white women. Like those were the people that really created that whole term. And when you really look at the activism side of it, it was created for and by middle and upper class white women. So I think the cool thing about womanism is, you know, Black women was like, hey, you know, you guys are advocating doing your thing, but like, what about us? You know what I'm saying? Like, you guys want equal pay and all that jazz, like we do as well. And I think the intersectionality part is so dope, because you have to be honest with yourself, and we have to be honest as a society and be like, okay, gender is important, race is important, and then you have to tap into class as well. Because the reality is that we live in a society where your treatment is based on where you fit in those three categories. And I think Veronica touched base on that earlier.
No, and I agree completely. And the idea is that like intersectionalism is now getting into feminism, but it's only because, again, like Black women made it. And now it's being coined as like a white feminism thing, is like, oh, I'm an intersectional feminist, because I mean, to be honest, I also like, I don't even know if I can identify as a womanist. I probably agree with a lot more.
You can, because I don't think womanist, I mean, this is just my opinion. I'm no expert, but I feel like a womanist, it's not just set for one race. I mean, I feel like a womanist is also someone who's an ally too. I feel like if you can acknowledge it and you're aware and you're conscious of the disparities and injustices that people go through when they are not middle and upper class white women, I do view those individuals not only as allies, but as a womanist as well, if you share the same ideology. But that's just me. It makes sense in my momento, but I don't know if it makes sense in other people's momento.
I don't know.
That was one question I was going to ask, is like, can Ronnie be a womanist? But I think, Ronnie, you said this a couple times. I wanted to ask you more about it, but I think this will illustrate the differences too. The glass ceiling. Can you talk more about that?
The glass ceiling is and you'll hear a lot of like white feminists chant this, like, oh, 77 cents to $1. But the backstory, and I'm going to be honest, as a white feminist before in college, I definitely chanted that shit too. Sorry for cussing.
Much as you want.
But
Cancelled.
canceled. But freshman year in college, I even wrote an essay about it. And even while I was like writing this essay, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So women make 77% like per $1, but what they're saying is white women, because minorities make even less. They make half $1 or maybe even less than that for a white man. And that's not really talked about because I guess maybe it's not chant worthy. I don't know, but
it's hard to chant. I will say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so the glass ceiling is the idea of like breaking the barriers of making like 77 cents to $1 that a white man would make, or a man. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I heard it in an even sillier way. The glass ceiling, it's like, why can't a woman be a CEO? Because if a woman wears a skirt and you look up on that top floor, you'll see up her skirt. That's why it's like a glass ceiling, because it's like you got to wear pants to go up there.
What a time.
That's a hell of an analogy.
Yeah, it took me a second because I was just like, wait, what? And I was like,
yeah,
okay.
I was like, whoa. Okay.
You know, brings into that super sexualizing any woman in power anyways. Like that's a huge thing that's just happening.
Right.
Always.
Be less sexy. That's the question.
Yeah. That was something that happened a lot with Elizabeth Warren as well. Like people would actually chant, like they were just like, no, she's not fit. She doesn't have the look. She's too grandma-ish or things of that nature. And yeah, but it's interesting to see that, like, because from a man's perspective, like, you know, I feel like our presidents have the same look. They pretty much look like it's a standard template. Like you change the suits, and then for 4 years you gave them a different skin tone. But other than that, it's like the same exact like palette, just going back and forth. But like with women and all the candidates, there's definitely a lot more scrutiny. And have y'all experienced that, like just on your day to day, like as working professionals as well, or even in the academic realm as well?
Absolutely. I mean, fun fact, I don't even wear skirts to work. I definitely wear pantsuits, and it's
by choice or by societal pressure?
Just through work experience, and you're just perceived differently. And not to say a pantsuit, you know, warrants you to be treated like you know your shit, but to a certain degree, yeah, I don't show up to business meetings, and I work in a mostly male-dominated field. I don't show up to business meetings in skirts. I show up in pantsuits. And that's just kind of the reality of it. I feel like, kind of going to Elliott's point, I would be treated different if I show up with a lot of makeup and, my, tight fitted blouse and a skirt. I just feel like I won't be taken seriously. I'll be more sexualized, if anything. But that's just, like I said, it makes sense in my mind. Thanks, Veronica, for understanding where I'm coming from. But just from experience, I've definitely been treated differently by the way I dress. Yeah, 100%. And even when I used to work in the penal system, I did not wear makeup. I tried my best not to necessarily look attractive. I kind of dressed like the guys did, because I didn't want to be sexualized. And especially as a Black woman too, like there's this sense of like hypersexuality already. So I try my best to be conscious of that and mindful and tone it down.
For sure. And that's, again, like that's another layer, is that like a white woman would be sexualized, but like being a woman who's a minority will even be hypersexualized. And that's seen in like everything, in TV and movies and all of the media, like everything. So it's a very interesting thing. But like on your topic, CeCe, like being an engineer, I can't really wear skirts anyways. But if I show up to an interview in a skirt with makeup, it's always like, should I be wearing lipstick? Should I not be? Are they going to think I can't use a tool? Even in interviews, it's like, I'll be asked the same question 5 times of, have you used power tools? Yes, bitch. I built a house. But it's like, if they see red makeup, or if they see red lipstick, or if they see that I have nails, I'm like, ooh, do I need to go get my nails shortened? Because like, they're going to question that, Yeah. But
I don't think me and Elliott, I don't think we've ever had that kind of experience. Like there's been times I'll rush to the interview, like a nice 15, 20 minutes, throwing like polo, maybe a button down.
Listen, the standards for white men are really low, and it's helped me out so much in life. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, I mean the same for white
Facts.
women.
Facts. Facts.
Uh,
I just want to
yeah.
know what it's like to be like you guys for a day. Just
So
a day.
easy.
Just a day. That's it.
So we should have like one Freaky Friday moment then.
That part, right? And that's like Elliott makes a really good point. Like that's just facts. Like that's the reality of the world that we live in. I mean, it's unfair, but I give Elliott kudos because at least he's aware and he's conscious of it. And I do believe if we lived in a society where people could turn the mirror on themselves and acknowledge, their own privilege, and then not only that, but be advocates for people who don't look like them, like the world would be a better place. So even then, the fact that Elliott and even you, Darius, both being men creating this space is phenomenal. And not only that, but leading and guiding the conversation about things that really matter. I just wish we had more people like you guys, man, to acknowledge your privilege and also create a really dope space for us to express ourselves.
Hey, we
But-
appreciate that. Like you can see it on my face. I appreciate it.
But Darius, here's reality, man. Our world is fucked. No, I'm just that's the reality. People don't acknowledge their privilege. And I don't know if they do it unconsciously or I don't know. I'm a Black woman. So according to Malcolm X, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. So I don't know. But even then I'm in a different class. So at the same time too, I'm very mindful and cognizant of, I do have access and certain privileges to people who are in a different class bracket than I am.
Yeah.
You
Right.
always haven't been. You haven't always been.
I haven't always been, right. That's facts, straight facts.
Yeah, I say that's where the intersectionality really comes into play too, because even like you mentioned, like this space alone. So if you look at all of the 4 squares, it's like you have Black man, Black woman, white woman. It's like at one point in time, this wasn't a thing. Like this was like outlawed. Like if Zoom was back then, the feds would be over right now.
We all going to jail.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, because like one little background for y'all is like, because y'all have been best friends since I don't know best friends. I don't know how y'all rank each other, but that'll be a different time.
That's my best friend. That's my dog.
He's my best.
So, because y'all been best friends since middle school, if I remember correctly, right?
Great, I think. Yeah.
So, like
Yeah.
seeing how much time has like passed and seeing that, how can I put this? Like knowing that you guys have some commonalities, but then also like 2 different walks of life. Like, how has that kind of like affected your friendship as you guys develop, like from girls to like young women, young professionals now? Because you guys are able to talk about the commonalities, but at the same time acknowledging each other's differences.
Mm.
Yeah. Can I broach this subject? So like all throughout high school, a lot of my friends, like not CeCe, but other friends, usually white, would always be like, oh, you and CeCe are the same. Like you guys have single moms, you guys are both like lower class. And then I would always like correct them and say, we're not. Like she deals with a lot more stuff. And same thing with like my family would be like, oh, like how come you're not getting as much money or scholarships as CeCe? And I'm like, for lots of reasons. But they never really were able to see past that. And I was never really able to like coin a word or explain it more. And then when I went into college and I took my first women's and gender studies class and learned about intersectionality, I was like, oh my God, this is it.
Right.
And like, that's when I really like learned to be so much more appreciative of like everything that she has gone through. And like, even shit that I would see, and I knew it was wrong, like in high school and like speech and debate and stuff, like it definitely, I learned and I realized and I learned to appreciate all of the struggles that she has to deal with just because she has darker skin than I. And honestly, I try to learn how to be more receptive to it, even like when we're outside and people are just a little fucking racist. Like I'll be like, hey, was that racist? And then so it's awesome that I have the possibility and like the friendship that I can to talk about these things with her and like have this relationship. And I'm very appreciative of it. So yeah.
Oh, me too, Ronnie. Man, Darius, that's a hell of a question. I definitely feel like our experiences have definitely shifted as we've grown from girls to women. We've definitely encountered some racist ass experiences. But here's what I really value about my friendship with Veronica, and even like my sisterhood too with Veronica. We're very honest and transparent people. And I think, especially when you start having relationships with people who don't necessarily look like you, it is so imperative that you're honest with yourself and you're comfortable enough to have honest dialogue with that person. Because I'm gonna be very frank, if Veronica and I weren't able to completely be ourselves and have honest conversation, this wouldn't be able to occur. And that's just the reality of it. And let's be frank, like there are still people in Veronica's family that they have a very old-fashioned mindset, right? And then our friendship still puzzles them.
Yes.
Which is okay. And even then, I have family members who have a very old-fashioned mindset as well. And they swear up and down, I'm going to be stoned to death for having my best friend being white. Right? Wow. But I think we have a civic responsibility too to challenge that. And then not only that, educate our family members and friends. But the reality is that everyone doesn't want to be receptive to education. You know what I'm saying? Like people feel comfortable staying in their ignorance, and people feel comfortable staying in that old-fashioned mindset. But that's what I love about our relationship. We're very honest with ourselves, and we're unapologetic and honest with other people. So either you can accept it or you can reject it. But I think it's so imperative that we're each other's allies. There's been situations that we've been in where I wouldn't say I tried to downplay it, but just being a Black woman, you know, you sometimes got to turn it down because you don't always want to be perceived as the angry Black woman. So there's definitely been times where me and Veronica have been in the same space, and it's a racist space that I've entered. And Veronica be like, bro, what the fuck? Like, why aren't you upset? and the reality is that I do be upset, but it's like, Ronnie, you know, I'm a Black woman, so I can't necessarily go there in this space. But best believe when we get in the car, I'm gonna give you a piece of my mind. And that's just the dope thing about our relationship, because I can be honest with Veronica. Right? I can't be honest, you know, necessarily in that space, because for some degree, it can be dangerous to my livelihood.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'll never forget one day we ended up going to WeWork in Summerlin. And when I tell you, the white people in this space made me feel non-existent, you would have swore Veronica came in by herself and I was invisible.
It was, can I take it from here?
Go for it.
We went to WeWork for like an youth activist conference. And so there was
That's the irony. The irony was equality, right? That's the irony of it. They were promoting equal, you know, access to education and all this other jazz. So you got to get the backstory part of that.
Yeah. So it was an activist. It was a whole like equality. We're like learning all these things, and there was all these booths, but the booths were for white people problems. It was like forestation and like renewables and like those type of things, and gay people. No offense, white people. It's all okay. Being gay is a intersectional thing, but a Black man who is gay is going to be Black first. It's a thing because you see his face first, you don't see his sexuality. But the whole entire time we would go to different booths and they just would not look at her. Like they would not acknowledge her. When it finally it hit its head for me, and I was like, okay, we need to leave or we need to do something else, is that we went to like I think it was like the National Forest booth, and we were talking about possibly using them as hikes. And the guy literally shifted and only looked at me for the whole entire conversation.
Wow.
Like he did not even acknowledge her.
Call me Ralph Ellison, because I was the invisible man.
It was.
Wow.
I was just astounded.
That's pretty.
And I was like, this is an activist place. So we eventually just used their space to create our own youth program. So yeah.
And mind you, we're of the same class. I mean, when you look at our finances, we make the same money. I mean, she lives in Henderson, I live in Summerlin. When you look at gender, we're both women, cisgendered women. Mm-hmm. But that race factor is a complete game changer.
And it was like, this is an activist whole entire convention. She was the only Black woman in the whole entire building. And it was just like, I'm going to be honest, when she invited me to this shit, I realized it was in Summerlin. And I was like, babe, do we need to go to this? Should we be? Yeah, so. But again, I have the privilege to get angry because I am a white woman. So I have the privilege to be a Karen versus like an angry Black woman.
Yeah, I would have been escorted out, probably banded from the property, probably put in handcuffs. I mean, you just have to learn. It's just
yeah. It's like the little twig, like giving you the push, like.
Veronica was more upset.
I was very angry
in the space than I was. But then, you know, going back to the question you asked is like, we've grown and developed with each other from girls to now women. So I feel very confident and comfortable to express my truth to Veronica, who obviously is a white woman. definitely couldn't do that in the space that we work in Summerlin.
Yeah, I respect that too. I think me and Elliot, we probably have like similar stories. Not as bad like from the women's aspect of it, but there's definitely like there's an aspect of it where we definitely coincide on a lot of things where we can relate with each other. But every now and then we come across our topics where we're just like, meh. I'm sure that will be demonstrated in later episodes, right, Elliot?
For sure. No, but there's something that when you have a friendship with someone who's different from you, and then you start to just have an honest conversation of like, hey, this just happened to me, and you see their side of it, it's like it just does. It broadens your perspective in a way that like you would just be blind to it otherwise. You wouldn't think about it. It doesn't happen to you. And sometimes it's also like you can be blind because you're a good person. Like I think there's a lot of white people who, if they went with you, CeCe, they probably wouldn't notice because they're like, I'm not racist. And I'm assuming these people aren't racist.
You're 100% accurate. 100%.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I mean, so it's tough. And I bet you two having that friendship, you helped each other out so much. Just, you having that.
100%. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm a Black woman. I'm human, right? And at the end of the day, when we express ourselves, like most humans, we just want to be understood.
Yeah, validated.
Yeah, that's it. So even when we left, we got in the car. Elliot, I was going in. I was very upset. But that's why I value our friendship, because it's good to have that person like, damn, man, I saw that shit too.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it might be better that it is that blatant as well too.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, CeCe, was there a time that you could think back to that you felt you had more privilege as a Black woman than Ronnie did as a white woman?
That's a very good question, actually.
It is a really good question. I think Veronica, she pointed it out. I was able to get a 4-year degree and graduate with no student debt. I mean, she was 100% accurate. I received, my whole education was funded by scholarships, which that's a privilege within itself to a certain degree. And here's the reality, right? There's always, and since I can be very candid on this call, my mentor told me there's always white people with a white savior complex that wants to give to a poor Black girl.
Oh yeah.
And that's just facts. So I think in that aspect, maybe, but other than that, no, Elliot, I can't think of any situation or any circumstance or privileges that I've had that Veronica didn't have access to, if probably more access to than I did.
Yeah, and to be honest,
that's what I can think of and that's only because we are best friends. So, we talk about finances and things of that nature. So when we were going through the process and, we selected schools and we're talking about tuition and things of that nature, I didn't have to worry about tuition because my tuition was paid for simply through just telling my story through essays and white people having a white savior.
Amazing writer. Sorry.
Right. That was about it. That's all I can think of, honestly.
But can I piggyback off that? And if I had chosen to stay at UNLV instead of running away from situations at home, I would have probably not been in like student debt, but I was like, I need to go to Flagstaff and be with the trees. So I need to be a real hippie. So yeah, if I had stayed at UNLV, I probably wouldn't be in student debt. I probably wouldn't have gotten as much help. But again, like that's not necessarily just because you're Black. It's just because you have an amazing story and you write like incredible. So yeah, but yeah, I cannot think of a time where she's had more privilege than me ever. So
interesting.
Yeah, me neither.
And I've known you since like 8th grade. So yeah.
8th grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Elliot, that's a good ass question, man.
That's a good question.
Thanks.
That's sad because I'm just like,
I know. It had the potential to be sad. I was hoping there's something, right? Like
cancelled. No, I'm just playing.
Good at dancing?
Huh?
CeCe's good at dancing. I don't know if that's a privilege.
Privilege. Yeah.
Look, I'm like, no, but here's my thing, I'm not the interviewer, but I have to ask, what about, Elliot and Darius? What about you guys? Has there been a time where Darius has had more privilege or access than you have?
You
Go ahead.
want me to answer that, Darius?
But now we're switching it.
I've got an answer. You go ahead.
I don't know. I guess potentially, like maybe I will say, I would say maybe in some aspects of like the dating scene, because me and Ella, we always talk about like, you know, dating, like the apps, dating in person, the evolution of like dating, blah, blah, blah. But as you kind of touched on earlier too, in terms of like fetishization, like that happens as like Black men as well. Like we're going to discuss that on another episode where it talks about like the use of the the BBC label, and it's not British Broadcasting Company, but like little aspects like that, I definitely feel that in certain spaces, I would probably get like more of like a look, like an extended look where it's like, who's that? Versus Elliot feeling
Look at
like the standard
Isn't
white guy.
that kind of like also racist because it's fetishized?
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of my head. I'm like,
Are you calling me a standard white guy? You piece
No,
of
it's off of your words. Off of your words. We were talking about what was it? It was one time we were
I
talking
never said that.
we were talking about something.
All I want to talk about is Darius is the master of a humble brag. Darius, how are there differences? Well, I have a really big dick, and people think I have a really big dick, and I think chicks would be more attracted to me. All right, great example, Darius. Yeah, I think that Darius has some privilege. We're doing another podcast. We've already recorded it, and it's about small penises. It's the Small Penis Podcast. Now, when you look at me and Darius, who do you assume would have the small penis?
I plead the fifth.
Well, it's Darius, but gosh.
Well, we'll save that for when the episode's released.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Well, I since I've thought about it a lot, and because I am a women's studies genius, I can tell you that there is such a thing as Black privilege. But something that I felt, I mean, I would just say, Ronnie, maybe you felt this though, is that in women's studies spaces or in any space where you're talking about gender, race, and class, typically, if you're a person of color, people listen to you more. People, you know, hear what you have to say. They want to hear your experiences. And when you make a statement about race, I think people listen a bit more than white people.
Can I flip that saying that it's because they have the experience and that's not a privilege because they've had to deal with racism? So I don't know if that's a privilege to me.
This gets into a question of, can white people experience racism? Because you just assumed that white people don't experience those things.
They cannot have racism. They can experience discrimination. Racism, CeCe can go with this. You go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ronnie. I mean, that's interesting you say that because people are so quick, because I'm very passionate about topics like this. And people are like, you know, yo, like you're a racist. I mean, but it's impossible for Black people to be racist just because we have no power, no institutional influence to influence policies that directly affect a race of people like white people can.
Yeah.
And that's why I always tell people it's impossible for Black people to be racist. Now, can we be prejudiced? Absolutely. Black people can 100% be prejudiced, but in regards to being racist, to have power and have the influence of policies and to dictate where people go to school and the funding of schools and dictate where a race of people can live and create policies and barriers to incarcerate mass amounts of people who are Black. Like, you know, we just don't have that type of systemic power like white people do. But to answer your question, I don't think white people can experience racism, but I do believe white people can experience, like Veronica said, discrimination and prejudice.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is something that, getting into it, I've had a lot of arguments with people about, but so okay. Racism, how would you define racism, I guess, in a sentence? Is it prejudice based on race?
No, there is more to it. Sorry. racism is the idea that one race is superior to the other and has the possibility and the means to be more powerful. Like I think that's like the textbook definition is something around that. It's not just prejudice against race. That's just.
So it comes down to more of like the reach, like the scalability aspect of it.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're affecting 5 people, it's like that would be considered racist because, you know, it's much smaller than like the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that's a way to look at it. But I think it's more to like what CeCe's point is saying is that like when you're racist is that like you have the power to introduce policy to actually have a change on that person's or on that people of color's situation.
Just hearing her speak, like the example I can think of is like systemic racism, for example. The fact that I'm not even going to just identify the race because I feel like it's pretty obvious, but the fact that people in a position of leadership and power can literally geographically place, which is known as redlining, a group of people in a concentrated area and directly impact the funding to that geographical area and directly impact the education of students in that geographical area. Like literally they have the power to remove resources and funding from that geographical area. To me, that's racism.
Like West Side downtown.
Exactly. Now, for me to be like, I think white people, you know, white men have small penises. That's prejudice. There's no, you know, like that. That's which I don't believe that. I don't believe.
Yes.
See, Darius, see how we're contributing to these stereotypes negatively, but
that's why we have the episode to denounce them, right?
Yeah, I see. Well, no, this is so that I want to point this out because maybe I can learn something, but I viewed it as racism is prejudice based on race, and I want to capture what you're saying. But my friend, she sent me pictures out of a textbook of sociology, and she was like, you know, this is what the definition of racism is. And scholars, they break racism down into 3 species. That you can have individual racism, and that's person to person. So you have a prejudiced or biased person, and you know they're racist towards you. You have a cultural racism, and that's where we get all those cultural beliefs, like you know that black women are sexually aggressive and like all that stuff. You have that culture where they don't really know, but they all share these beliefs. And then there's systemic racism, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And that's the systems of power in place that even if in our justice system, it doesn't say anywhere anything about race, why is it that Black people and brown people are just disproportionately affected if you look at the outcomes? So
can I interject? I'm gonna give you the
one more thing. But I think that white people can experience individual racism, cultural racism, but they can't really experience systemic racism. But what I want to ask people who think that white people cannot experience racism because they don't experience systemic racism, why is it that the systemic racism is so critical? Why is that essential to a racist experience?
Can I just interject, and then you can definitely go off. I'm going to give you the Oxford Dictionary. And I think this is what I'm saying is that I understand that that's like the sociology, but like the textbook definition from Oxford is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. That's what I'm saying is that I don't know if white people can have discrimination because at this point in our society, and in systematic, and even just as in cultural, like the white experience or the white culture or the white people are superior in this specific. I'm not saying that's true, but like based on finances, based on political power, based on redlining, based on literally most wealth distribution, white people are the ones that are in power. So, but go ahead.
Well, based on what you said though, that definition, the Oxford definition, doesn't say anything about systemic power. All you need is a person who believes their own race is superior and that the other is inferior. And there are Black supremacists, Black nationalists. So those people by that Oxford definition, can be racist towards white people, and white people can experience racism.
I think we might have touched on this for another episode too, because I do like where this is going.
Me too. Me
No,
too.
I love talking
Yeah, like-
about this.
Yeah, because this is good, but I want to steer it right back to like the womanism, feminism route.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not saying like this. I'm not saying like this is bad convo at all, by any means. Like if anything, this would be like a to be continued, hands down.
Let's get back to talking about how white people have little dicks. Can we go back to that?
That's true. I don't know.
Back to the main point.
Well, okay. Well, speaking of that, let's just say like so I guess we can kind of wrap that. We'll wrap the because how did you phrase it when I said it? You said it was like mansplaining or something, I think, right? How did you word it, Elliot?
Man, how did I word it? I don't know, but let's talk about mansplaining.
Oh.
Okay, let's.
CeCe?
Well, Darius is frozen.
Oh no, Darius.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely happened. I'm an engineer and a woman. But even without being in engineering, mansplaining happens on a very normal basis, one would say. It's just the idea is that like I could be doing something already, like physically doing a thing, and a guy legitimately needs to feel the urge that he has to explain to me the thing that I'm already doing, or that there's a better way to do it. Take last night with Jorge trying to tell me that I don't know how to get to my own fucking house, but you know, it's okay. Because for some reason, guys just really feel the need that sometimes they are more intelligent or that they know things better than women do inherently. I think it's like a societal thing. It's not necessarily always like they're doing it consciously. Like society has raised them up that they need to be the ones to know directions and how to get a woman safe to their home, or a person to be able to provide that safety, that ability to build something. Like there's been many a times where I literally taught a guy how to use a tool, and like the next week he's like, oh, you're doing that wrong. I was like, bitch, I taught
you.
But it's just like, it's their societal role that they have been taught to fill. So, I mean, it is kind of their fault, and they're probably ignorant of it, and they should probably work to do it, but it's not necessarily all their fault.
Mm.
Okay. Mm. I will say that kind of ties into, because like what they're calling fourth wave feminism as well is kind of tying into the elimination of like gender roles. So it seems like that may be something that we see changing with kids growing up from all different genders and sexes. Because as you mentioned, like as a boy, we're always taught to, you know, be confident, be leaders, take charge, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So based upon what Ronnie was saying, so maybe if that is eliminated in terms of having that preference towards this is how you raise a boy, this is how you raise a girl, are you saying like basically by eliminating that, there's a possibility that we can start seeing the elimination of mansplaining, but then also the confidence being boosted for young girls as they transition to women?
Yeah, I mean, if you even think about it, like the whole idea of like, oh, there's a pink aisle and then the blue aisle of toys. Like a girl's handed a Barbie and a boy's handed like a Lego. I was like gratefully raised by my father and my mother loves sports and my dad loves Star Trek, but my dad also loves to work on cars. So like I had dancing and I had that girly experience of like makeup and lipstick and Barbies, but I also had the experience of like, here's a whole fucking box of Legos and Connects, have fun. And like, let's work on cars on the weekend. So I had that like, I had the audacity to not know that there was gender roles. Then I went into engineering and like, why is there no other woman here?
Gotcha.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, I haven't really had much experience with that mansplaining. So yeah, I couldn't even nothing even came to mind for that topic for me for some odd reason.
Yeah, Ronnie's like, oh yeah, yesterday.
Yeah, I was like, damn, she can give an example as recent as yesterday. Yeah, I don't have anything on that one. I can't think of. But hearing you guys speak, and since, you know, we were talking about feminism and womanism, it's like hearing her experience about the aisles and just the way of being raised, that womanism part of me kind of clicked in, because I'm like, my experience is very different being a young Black girl. And I have brothers. I'm the baby of 6 kids. It's 3 boys and 3 girls. And even then, my brothers didn't necessarily have the privilege of playing semi trucks and UFC stuff. I mean, the conversation of being a young Black boy into transition to a teen is very different. You know, keep your hands visible. You know, make sure you're home at a certain time, and law enforcement. And even then, looking at it from another race lens, as a womanist, I guess you can say, there's always strength in white women's weakness. Yet, you know, being a Black girl, now a Black woman, my mother was really big on instilling, having that superwoman complex about myself. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like you have to be everything to everybody. There's no room to be exhausted. You always have to be resilient, always pick yourself up by your bootstraps. The experience for me is very different. So when it comes to mansplaining or man explaining, how do you say the word?
Mansplaining, you're correct.
Yeah.
It's very different because, you know, kind of going back to like that strong Black woman complex. And it's not true, but they have to say like a Black woman don't need no man for nothing. That's not true. But now that I'm thinking out loud to a certain degree, I've never had to experience that because I've always been my own self-sufficient person. And I don't need necessarily a man to tell me how something needs to get done.
For sure.
And actually, I've never experienced it. Like, I just haven't experienced it. So that's why I can't give an example.
You can unpack the fact that you feel like you should always go and you always do go and you never allow yourself to be exhausted. But that's
like the whole resiliency versus exhaustion thing. Yeah. Yeah. But that kind of goes back to the whole topic, you know, for today's segment, you know, feminism versus womanism. I'm going to speak to,
I've seen, maybe I haven't seen exactly, but I've definitely seen a guy try to interrupt you while you're speaking, or if you're telling something and a guy will try to interrupt. And I've seen this happen. And I think because of the way that your mother raised you and because of your experience as a Black woman is that you just shut it down. You just shut it down. And I've seen it.
My mom's in the background laughing because like it's fine. That's just the way I was raised. That's just how my strong Black mother poured into me. So yeah, I wish somebody would try to tell me something. But never mind.
That's the thing. And I mean, honestly, that's a good way to also like mitigate mansplaining or the whole idea that a man needs to be in the position of power is because you're so powerful and your mother raised you that way. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So one thing I want to talk about is like men feminists, right? So as me and Elliot, we kind of identified earlier, like we definitely support like feminists and womanists now that, you know, I'm aware of it now, movements. And it's like, I'm curious in terms of like a men feminist or a man feminist, or is it possible that they can lose their title of being a male feminist? And to give some perspective.
Oh, can they be canceled?
Yeah.
Oh, the irony.
Hey, Darius just.
I don't know.
So for the case study.
You're freezing. You're freezing.
You're frozen. There you are.
Frozen? There's random network issues. How about now? Am I good?
You're good.
A little better.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, random network issues. That's the worst part about tech. So in terms of like the case study I want to bring up, so as Elliot knows, like I'm big on stand-up comedy. I love comedy. I love comedians that can deliver a very social political like discussion. Like Dave Chappelle is my all-around favorite, like hands down, right?
My favorite.
Oh yeah, by far. So
Best.
the individual I want to mention is Aziz Ansari. I don't know if everyone's familiar with them.
Okay.
A little bit.
Oh, we're gonna go there. All right.
Oh yeah, I had to. Me and Elliot, we've talked about this before. But so the background story was Aziz had a hookup. He had a casual partner. They were engaging in the naughties, as we'll call it. And basically she was throwing out cues that he wasn't picking up on that made her distressed, discomfort, uncomfortable, things of that nature. And so fast forward, the next day she gives him, like she texts him, lets him know how she felt and the whole situation that was at hand that he didn't really acknowledge, and he immediately apologized.
Oh no.
I'm sorry. Very
Darius?
that wasn't my intent kind of thing. But however,
Darius, let me explain.
huh?
Let me explain and then interrupt me and mansplain if I get something wrong.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you cut out a bit. It's hard to hear what you're saying.
Oh my god, dude, these tech issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just
But
go ahead.
well, you were saying that, like, yeah, Aziz Ansari, he was kind of seen as a feminist, right? And he still wants to say that before and after he's a feminist. But this was during, I didn't even know until I was researching for this episode. Fourth wave feminism is about bringing like feminist thought to the digital world, and the Me Too movement is seen as kicking that off.
Yep.
So Aziz Ansari, he got Me Too'd, but
Yeah.
it was controversial why he got Me Too'd. And
Oof.
people
I
kind
think,
of stood up on both sides.
and I think a lot of the times, rape and sexual abuse and sexual assault can get muddled, because there's two opposing sides, and a lot of the times previously it was always we would just take the man's side. I mean, even now, like, there's still situations where judges are giving people like 12 days in jail for someone literally raping someone.
Whoa.
But like Aziz specifically, the fact that he addressed it so quickly, and like, and he found that, like, did he denounce it technically? Did he ever say that didn't happen?
No, I think he took responsibility for it, but he did mention like that was never his intent.
Correct. And I agree. My friend Tabitha always tells me intention doesn't matter, because it doesn't. You should be aware. And like, the situation is like a lot of people, like a lot of guys, not even guys, like this is a whole issue with both genders or both sexes, sorry, all of the genders, is that if someone, even like if someone's flirting with someone and they might not be flirting back, but they still go for something, and that person doesn't know how to react, a lot of the times they're not just going to be like fight or flight. They might freeze. They might just continue because they don't know how to do it, because they don't know where their safe situation is. And that could have been what was happening with her. And the situation is that you should always have consent, even if it's a person that you've already slept with many of times. Like, I fucking ask Martin, my boyfriend, like if I can kiss him every time I kiss him, because like it's just consent's the thing that needs to happen. So I'm like, to me, I'm glad that he apologized, and I understand that his intent was not there, but intention doesn't necessarily matter. It's the action.
So
Like, you can kill someone, there's still like manslaughter.
Yeah.
You still go to jail.
Yeah. So in your opinion, he loses the feminist title.
I don't necessarily know if he loses the feminist title, but I think he should be working towards educating himself and maybe become an advocate and understand what is happening. Maybe he shouldn't be taking up space in the advocacy, but like learning, making yourself more aware. Like, everyone has done dumb shit. I've even done dumb shit that I'm very regretful for, and I constantly apologize. And it was never in my intent, but like, it's the idea of like learning from that experience, getting more awareness, and then also maybe even just telling other people. Like, half the time is that rape and sexual assault wouldn't be a huge issue if people would communicate with their friends saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't be, I don't know, doing this with a person that's drunk. Yeah.
Right.
That's fair. CeCe, what do you think?
I concur.
Short and sweet. I love it.
Short and sweet. Yeah, no, I think the point she made is very accurate. Yeah, I 110% agree.
No, I like that though. It's not about canceling someone, right? You're leaving the door open for someone to grow, to learn, to be a better feminist than they were before.
Yeah.
And see, even that was one of the motivations why me and Elliot created the podcast too, was we don't believe in immediate cancellation for the most part. It's like allow people to explain their side, allow them to learn from it, see what their actions are further, instead of just like, if you get offended at the TV, you can either turn the TV off right then and there, or you can let it run out, its entire duration, and then make a decision.
Yeah.
I like that.
Me too. Even like, there's probably dumb shit I've said to CeCe when I was younger, and like now I try to be smarter about it, but like, I don't know. I don't think about, I have no idea if I have said
Mistakes. That's
I mean, I used to say to you, you can't say the N-word. What a time.
I still said it.
You still did.
Dang.
That is funny.
I hated that word with a passion. Yeah, I didn't like the word because my family's from the South, you see, so there's like a backstory. So when they would say it sometimes, it wasn't like, like in a family friendly way.
Okay, random, I don't know why, but random story. So for my mom's birthday last year, I threw a surprise party. And Veronica came, and like some of my mom family came, or my mom friends came, of course, our family. And we were playing the game Taboo. Veronica, you remember that? And so mind you, Veronica, she's my best friend and my only white friend. So she's here with all these Black people. And she gets up to describe the word on the card. And she's like, something that people used to do that was bad. I can't remember the exact words verbatim, but my family was like, lynch him. And the card was like, oh, fuck no, next card. I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. I literally thought about it when you was like, I'm saying dumb shit. But we all said dumb shit. But I like the idea of giving people the opportunity to fix their mistake. And like, even after the game, Veronica was like, okay, I can see why y'all lynching. But that wasn't it in such a hypersensitive society, right? And I just think, like, that's why I love this show. Like, let's create a space where we can really talk about shit that really matter and laugh at that shit. Because sometimes you have to laugh to keep from crying too. But not only that, like, when she said that, we just all cracked the fuck up. Because it's like, first off, lynching's not even a word in the game Taboo. No. Number one.
Right.
Like, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, it was a really cool segue conversation really quick. Like, okay, let's get educated, let's get empowered, and let's move the fuck on, right? And I just think that's so imperative. So when Darius explained the whole concept about you guys' podcast, personally, I really fuck with it because that's really, we need more spaces like this to have conversations about topics that are so sensitive. Because we live in such a hypersensitive society. Like when you start talking about race, people be like, you know, you gotta say the word lynching during Taboo and laugh at that shit, talk about it and move on. Okay, that's just what popped in my head. Sorry, guys. I have a morbid sense of humor. Fun fact.
I mean, it's hilarious. Like,
that's all right, but that's
it's definitely not a car.
level, right?
Hopefully.
Oh.
But no, the crazy, it was like 3 of my family members was like, lynching! And Veronica was like, no! Next card. But go ahead, sorry. I digress.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Like the whole idea is like canceling people so quickly is very, I mean, people who have a history of doing the same shit over and over, even if it's being addressed, like that's a very different story.
That's
It
different.
needs to be addressed. But the idea of like canceling people without like the idea of justice and evidence and time for possibly awareness and advocacy and like learning, like most people do dumb shit because they're ignorant. Like that's number one. Like I love my family, and if they watch this, they might hate me, but half of them, like they have some racist ass views, and it's because they just haven't met Black people. Or like my family was a little bit, they were Islamophobic, like growing up a little bit. Hello 9/11 and a bunch of other things, but like I became best friends with 2 people who were Muslim from Saudi Arabia in college. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna cure you guys. I'm gonna bring them to Christmas and Thanksgiving. And honestly, it worked. They all loved them. And they really did like take more steps to learn and understand their culture. And I even remember one time we were at like Arizona Charlie's having breakfast. And I think it was Faraz, he ordered the gravy and it has pork in it. And my family immediately freaked out because he went to the bathroom to go pray. And they're like, go get the waiter. He can't have that. It has ham in it or like pork. And I'm just like, wow, y'all care.
Way to be conscious, right?
Exactly. But like ignorance is really.
They start to see the world more through their eyes. That's great. Yeah. I think you're totally right about meeting people. One thing that was really interesting is the most effective way that they found to like break down prejudice, they tested with transgender people. And it's deep canvassing. It's like political canvassing, you know, where people knock on your door and they're like, hey, will you vote for Bernie Sanders? It'd be really cool if you did. This is deep canvassing where a transgender person walked out, knocked on doors and said, hello, I'm transgender and I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about my life. And that actually worked to change people's opinions. Because like you were saying with your family, they've just never met people like that before. So they have all these prejudiced views that they never corrected.
Yeah, and CeCe and Dominique are very different, you know, so that's like
That goes back to class. Like
Yeah.
we're the same race, same gender, but we come from two complete opposite universes, right? Like our class is very, very different.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think too, going like to Elliott's point, I also feel like it's about exposure.
Yeah.
Like it's so imperative that we're exposed to other universes outside of our own.
Agreed.
Even touching the same subject is like with feminism or womanism is that like having the idea of like most people don't realize the issues that women do face like in the workplace or the biases that they do get because they've never seen it or they're ignorant of it. They're like, oh, this is just how a woman should normally be treated at work. Like a woman shouldn't have to wear like, or they're like, oh, women don't wear skirts because they're not comfortable. No, we wear pants because we don't want to be sexualized. And it's like they're just so ignorant of the issues and the biases that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's fair. And I 100% agree. Like even this episode right here, it's like it's allowing us to kind of be exposed to both of your perspectives because me and Elliot, we haven't endured the same walks of life that y'all have. Again, we have commonalities, but there's definitely some unique aspects that me and him will never have to experience.
Yeah.
I will say too. So Elliot, was there one more topic? Because I know everyone's running a little bit on time. As much as I love this, I don't want to cut it short, but you know.
We have that final question, which is, what does modern feminism look like to you? I guess, you know what a question I really wanted to ask as well is, I've met people, women, white women typically, who think that we don't really need feminism anymore. They're post-feminists, and they don't see why we would need feminism. So I'm just curious, modern feminism, what do you feel like are the issues to you that should be worked on?
Are you well, Veronica's the feminist.
Okay, I mean, I'll go.
And womanist as well.
And
Okay.
To you as well, CeCe.
Yeah, I think from a Black woman standpoint, Black maternal health for me is a huge social justice issue that we're dealing with. It's not really a large topic of conversation like it should be because right now it only does affect Black women, but we're noticing just through statistics, Black women are dying at an extremely higher rate than any other race of women when it comes to having babies or delivering babies. And I think that really boils down to the lack of equitable healthcare as well. Like it's so deep that we really don't have to unpack it, have time to unpack it. But I think for me right now, if I had to choose a social justice issue right now that needs to be addressed in modern day society or addressed, really feminist and womanist needs to come together. But Black maternal health is something that is a huge issue right now that definitely needs to be addressed.
Yeah, for sure. And to piggyback off that, I was recently, I love
facts.
Yeah, is like even, of course, like they're also passing away, but a lot of Black women are being forced to have C-sections, like forced, and it's terrible. Yeah, and I honestly don't know how to tackle that situation. Everyone knows probably like my passion of choice is sexual assault. You know, I love that. It's really morbid, but as a white woman, I love my favorite murder. So
right. It's in your DNA.
Yeah, fuck politeness right there. But I think feminism or womanism should include not just women anymore. And I think that's why like equitist is the word that I would probably eventually maybe one day coin and become, is that like for me, sexual assault is an issue that stems across class, across gender, across race. Like the statistics that like they have is like 1 in 4 for a man and 1 in 3 in a woman, but like it is statistics like exponentially higher for a person who's a Black woman. And it's just, to me, is like it has these effects on people continuously, and it's like a cycle of family trauma that just continues. And if a woman gets sexually assaulted once or a person gets sexually assaulted once, the likelihood of it happening again is just so much larger. And I think it's just this lack of education that we're having, and even with classes, that like if you're poor, the likelihood of you getting sexually assaulted is just, so that's one of the issues that I'm really strongly passionate about. And I feel like feminism or womanism addresses.
Yeah, no, I agree with you both. I think those are both super important issues, and they're issues that we do have like hard data on. You don't have to really debate it with anecdotes. It's like, you could just see it if you just look at the data.
Another point too, and it has nothing to even do with Black women or white women. Right now, another major social justice issue that's affecting like the Native American community is a lot of Native American women are like gone missing.
Yeah.
That's another social justice issue or topic that, I've heard about from people who identify in that community. But as far as it being exposed on a larger spectrum or being exposed in the media, or the real data and numbers being available for us to have to really spark conversation, like that's another topic or I guess social justice issue that needs to have some light.
Yeah, even like sex workers, especially who are minorities, like they are just going missing constantly.
Yeah, which is really interesting. Like that Native American stuff, like that really right there, I was like, oh man, and they're gone missing. They're abducted, essentially.
It's just,
they're never being seen or heard of from again. So
the idea that white feminists don't believe that there should be feminism anymore is very ironic to me.
Facts.
No, those are important things too. Last comment, I mean, Black maternity is definitely important to me as well, but until the system gets changed, I would say Black mothers should get doulas. A doula is like a representative for you. It's like a social welfare worker who will advocate for you. And I think that Black women should get light-skinned or white doulas whenever they're getting pregnant, because that's the person who's going to say, no, she's not getting a C-section. No, she does need pain medication, and give it to her now. And there's just a lot of systemic reasons why Black mothers don't get the same treatment.
Even there's like a test to see if you need a C-section. And one of the questions is, are you Black? And it like has a large effect on the score if you're going to require a C-section instead of a natural birth.
And going back to your point, Elliott, when you gave the definition and you explained racism in 3 separate tiers. And I know you asked a question, but we didn't get around to it. I think your thing was, you have individual racism, you have cultural racism, and you have systemic racism. Personally, for me, I think systemic racism is more impactful because it literally, policies and procedures are in place to directly impact our lives on a daily basis. And I think that's the difference, right? If I'm experiencing individual racism, I can choose to remove myself from that space. But when it's influenced by the system, that's a whole different game of Monopoly that we're playing, right? It's completely different because the system has the power to influence every aspect of my daily life, literally. I don't have children, but in the event, I choose to have children, what we're talking about right now is a social justice issue that I definitely have to be mindful of when I make that conscious decision to have children, right? Because I already know the system is set up and it's not meant for me anyway when it comes to being a Black woman, having a Black baby. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. It's deeper than just my doctor's white and he's racist. That individual thing, this whole system is set up, right? I mean, and even the resource that you recommended, if you didn't recommend that and people didn't have access to your recommendation,
where would they have known?
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, that's fair.
But when you made that point, I was like, that really stood out to me because the question was like, why is the systemic one so impactful? Why is it such a larger influence than the other two? And honestly, for me, I think that's why. It's just because it impacts every aspect of not just my life, but everybody's life on this call.
Agreed. Yeah. One thing too is like, I definitely think that we should have like a part 2 to this because I think that there's a lot that's being like discussed that I can see this conversation like evolving and growing because like due to the limits of time today, like I would have to cut it off early, and y'all know I don't want to. Like I'm loving every second of this, but it's like
me too.
But I want to respect y'all's schedule and everything, and we do appreciate having y'all today, and even though we're having like a little tech issues in the background, that's my bad. I'm gonna call up like Cox Cable, figure that out.
Nice.
So, but yeah, for me, this was great, and I'm looking forward to seeing like what comes from this conversation, like how people react to it, and then possibly doing a part 2. Would y'all possibly be open for that as well?
Nah, man, y'all cancel. No, I'm just kidding. I would love to. I would love a part 2.
All right.
Absolutely.
Season 2.
So in that case, like I guess we'll go ahead and sign off. But I do appreciate all
Yeah.
y'all time. Y'all are all amazing people, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from this. And we're going to do this again for sure. So that's all on my end.
Robot Day.
Yes. Thank
Yes.
you so much. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's such a dope platform, man. Shout out to the Cancel team, Elliott and Darius. We need more people like you, more allies, more advocates, more activists to create these safe spaces for dialogue. So thank you guys so much. Although Darius, it sound like you was a transformer. I was like, where Bumblebee coming in at? I was like, God damn, Megatron. But other than that, this was super. Y'all know my wire's not tight upstairs. But this was super good. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate y'all. So until next time, bye everybody. Thank you again.
Bye.
All right. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.